We tend to have this over romanticized, idealistic version of what a growth journey looks like in our heads. And when we're warned about the bumps along the way, we simply view them as these small, inevitable inconveniences. When in reality, real, raw, and actually effective growth is something that changes who you are fundamentally. Real growth makes you, unlock a new layer of patience that you never had before. Growth is something that is ferocious, it is nonlinear, it's unpredictable, it's something that will require a lot from you. And the whole purpose is that you're exploring new sides of yourself, you're strategizing, and you're developing a more mature version of yourself. Today, I'll be talking about just how we need to view growth, how it is already viewed, and how we can stay grounded and stay humble in our growth, as well as addressing the brutal realities and expectations and realistic thinking towards our growth journeys. Hello, I'm Danya, and welcome to my very thoughtful space of the internet. As always, if you have something to talk about regarding something I've said, you want to challenge one of my points, or you want to talk about how you liked one of my points, then please do so in the comments, because on this page I want to share intellectual conversations. I want to talk about commonly debated topics as well, so I can provide my own perspective on it. And as always, knowledge is the best teacher. And what's better than sharing it with a like-minded community? Now, for my first point, I'll be talking about what exactly growth is. Growth is something that is extremely personal, I think, and it is very subjective depending on the individual, whether it's growth in your career, in a characteristic, on social media, or physical growth itself. They all share a very common, fundamental core philosophy, which I think is unpredictability. Or I guess you have to practice effort while understanding its unpredictable nature. You're not supposed to know exactly how growth works or how it will occur in your life, because you have to focus on seizing the present moment, not worrying about the future or the past, not ruminating on them in an unnecessary way without using it as an opportunity to learn, but rather as a form of anxiety. You're supposed to be using the present to make your future, to craft your future, to craft your past as well. You have to keep using this moment in growth to keep moving forward. Growth is essentially an ongoing process of maturity. It's a process which you are constantly moving forward, constantly evolving, constantly changing. And so when you take control of your present and you harness it, that's what keeps you going forward. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of how growth is kickstarted. I would say that it starts with a clear vision. It starts with a clear purpose and a goal. For example, if your goal is to learn a language, for example, French, if your goal is to become proficient or perfectly fluent by the end of the year, that is what your clear purpose is, your clear motive, and that's what keeps you going throughout the whole journey. And growth is something that shakes hands with change. What growth entails is a constant need to change yourself, change your values, change who you are as a person, change what your normal routine is to reach that maturity. If you think about the stars and the planets, even the animals, even technological advancements, the way society works, we are always changing, improving, and moving forward. It's kind of like a river stream. And such is our natural course of life. Every human gets older. Every human changes their beliefs, as they mature. And so if this is our core inner nature, then this is how growth will work, inevitably. And so how this will occur is that when you're in growth, you will be forced to challenge your old habits. You'll be forced to relearn, the things that you used to practice, or learn new habits, or change things about yourself that are difficult to address. So my second point is battling expectations and realities of growth. growth is something that requires a lot of friction. A lot of friction is required in reaching a higher stage of maturity. If you think about it like a game, imagine you have 5 stages. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you're in stage 1, by repeating the habits that are required at stage 1, you will never get to stage 5, because each stage of your growth requires a new higher level of friction. And only that way will you actually gain enough exposure and enough tolerance to be able to handle that stage. If you add new habits, constantly challenge yourself and push yourself out of the bubble of your comfort zone, then you can reach maturity. The whole point of growth is that you're expanding yourself to be bigger than your comfort. It's all about making yourself exposed, vulnerable, and uncomfortable to reach a certain stage of maturity. Whether this is a small growth journey or a big growth journey, it all requires some level of effort, right? And so whether that can make you only a little bit uncomfortable or very uncomfortable, they are all necessary to reach a higher stage. Now, I want to talk about this model of growth that I've kind of formed. It is very, I guess, rudimentary, but it's a way to visualize how our momentum is distributed through these stages. So at the beginning, growth can seem really exciting, very opportunistic. It's new, inspiring, can be a bit overwhelming, but I would say that opportunity is surrounding you all the time, and it can feel a bit romantic. You could either reach a flow state, or you could end up teetering a bit where your momentum is falling short, you're losing a bit of hope, there's a bit of disinterest, you're, forming a bit of self-doubt very gradually. And why this happens is because self-belief is a core value that is implemented in growth. And I will talk about that, how that is related to success, but it is correlated to success in a way. And so when you lack your clear purpose, when your motive isn't clear, when you aren't practicing the art of self-belief and faith in your process, and you are, focusing too much on the how of growth, that's when things start to fall a bit. We're not supposed to be overly consumed by how growth happens, because, like I said, your focus is not on the future. Your focus on the present is the most important thing that matters. It's the only thing that will actually cause a difference. And so by wondering, oh, how is this going to happen? No, it's so impossible. That's not going to do you any favor. It's something that you have to create yourself. It's nothing that's available to you. You have to create growth yourself. And so by showing up no matter what and continuing the exploration, continuing the process of figuring things out and making your journey your own is the most important thing and fundamental thing you can do. Now, here I'll be talking about how self-belief and success are interlinked, and also trust in God. I just want to mention that as a Muslim, it's my duty to share my Islamic teachings as well. And so the difference between a quitter and a resilient person is definitely the way they approach their growth journey. Someone with a mindset of self-belief will always gain success, or someone who has trust in God will always have success. And they are directly correlated, basically. So Islamically, we believe that God's plan is always going to be the best plan. We're relaxed because the way that God will let our growth journey unfold will always be the one that is most important for us to learn. So secularly, you could say that believing in the process, believing in the nature of the process, that it's beneficial for you, will help you get to the end goal peacefully. By trusting that things happen for a reason will help you reframe your view on growth. Because if you think that, okay, if this obstacle happened, this obstacle was there for a purpose, to teach me this specific skill, then you realize, oh my goodness, this is growth. I'm learning things. It's something that is perfectly tailored for your growth journey. Growth will always have to go on its natural course. You cannot force growth. You can't make it slow down. It's just going to happen the way it happens. And obviously, Islamically, or with a monotheism mindset, you would know that if God is doing something, he's doing it for a calculated plan and a reason to help you grow. And also that things happen for your best interest as well. Growth really helps you to learn new things. It forces you to learn new things, change who you are. So I think one of the things that we have to accept is that we need to swallow our pride and sort of just learn those lessons. We have to get out of this victim mindset and just hit the road. If growth forces you to enter an unfamiliar space, then you need to just trust the process and go and do it. Because maybe this is the path for you to unlock the door to success. I've touched on a lot about how comfort is the enemy of growth. When you stay in one bubble for a long time, you only stay in the bubble. You aren't invited to higher spaces. If you think of yourself, imagine you're in this small container, this small bubble, which is called comfort. But your potential is bigger than that. It's the size of this room. And the only way you can be, big enough to fit into that container is by growing, right? And by doing that, you need to outgrow your container, which is a small container of comfort. By outgrowing your comfort, then you're able to reach the cosmos. You're able to reach higher spaces. And this is really fundamental to reach that level of maturity that you want. Even on a very basic level, if I think about if your goal is to become, I guess, a more professional artist, you could say that you need to learn difficult things that you would usually not do. For example, learning anatomy or learning how lighting works, color theory. All of those things are a bit annoying to learn. I know as an artist because I tend to just draw for the leisure of it. But obviously getting through those fundamental teachings will help you to get to that higher stage of being better at art. Similarly with school, if you want to, let's say, be a doctor, then the pathway you'd have to take would be extremely difficult, forcing you to squeeze yourself into the tight schedule of rotations and hospital placements and obviously the very dynamic nature of medicine. So they are very inconvenient and demanding things. But the whole point is that you have to get through them. That this is how you get to that end stage when you force yourself to become bigger than what you're already used to. We think that opportunities have to approach us. For example, I'm just going to magically receive an email that says, hey, we want you to apply for our internship, or just magically in the wind a brochure will come flying at us with opportunities. That's never going to happen. Most of the time what happens is growth will come to you in these small unnoticeable moments where you look deeper and you think, oh, there's this small part of myself that I just needed to change, and that would change my whole mindset and my approach to everything. It can be, patience. It could be the way that you talk to people. And you'll see that when you work on those small things, then you're able to go into the external world with more of a mature mindset. Well, how growth is supposed to happen is you work internally and then externally. You're supposed to work at steps calmly and informed. For me, my biggest issue was always jumping into random hobbies and skills and spaces, expecting myself to grow without even having that patience and having that informed mindset, without even researching what I was doing. I had this huge ego that I would just become professional in whatever I was doing simply just by putting myself there. But the whole thing that you need to do first is to warm yourself up and then go into those bigger spaces. You have to work a bit small and then slowly get bigger. And that's how maturity is. When you're a baby, you learn very basic things like the ABCs. You learn your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, until the number 10. That's it. You learn very basic things and you play with blocks and whatever you play with. But when you get older, you start to play with more mature toys, you start to talk to older kids, and then when you get older, you enter more intellectual spaces, and then you become an adult one day. And you see how this very beautiful growth process works, that you have to go into the rudimentary to get to the complex. You can't just arrive at the complex and expect yourself to flourish in it. You have to go back to stage 1, and then to stage 2, and then to stage 3, and then to stage 4, and then to stage 5. If your progress goes backwards or you lose something in the name of growth, that in itself is a very golden opportunity to learn the art of adaptability. And what I mean is that when adversity approaches you, you have to have the intellectual, I guess, flexibility, the neuroplasticity to be able to conquer those situations, to understand what's the next step, to be able to, with a lot of agility, discover the next step and the next stage that you have to take in order to recover from that process and to also learn from it. In a traditional sense, learning is the process of receiving new information, then studying it or practicing it, then you make mistakes, and then you learn from the mistakes. And you keep on repeating that cycle. And obviously, everyone is bound to make mistakes. Nobody will end up stopping making mistakes if they keep learning, that is. If you view growth with a more structured mindset, it removes, I guess, the sort of vagueness of it. I think people tend to feel overwhelmed with their growth journey because they don't set actual achievable goals that help them reach their outcome. For example, if I tell myself I want to become a professional football player within a year, but all I do is just go to the classes and I don't set actual quantifiable goals to actually consider that I have achieved maturity, or to say I have achieved maturity. By doing that, it's really unrealistic. What you have to do is that, for example, what I guess I would do would say, every month I will set a target for myself to, let's say, rate my performance out of 10, see how confident I am with football. And if I reach 10 stars by the end of the year, then that will show that I have gotten maturity. So essentially, by setting measurable, achievable, digestible goals, you can actually measure your maturity, and then your growth becomes something more clear that gives you more motivation to continue your growth journey. Something that also has to be accepted is that you will feel embarrassed, you'll feel, intimidated, and you might feel silly or scared. And a person who feels this way is actually growing. When you feel embarrassed, that's because you're becoming bigger than your comfort bubble. When you exit your comfort bubble, it starts to feel awkward and unfamiliar. And that is exactly the whole point. I want you to stay in that moment and keep exposing yourself to that discomfort, because that's the only way for you to actually become hardened to those experiences and actually become more mature and to actually get to the stage you want to be at. Similarly, someone who isn't, aware or accepting of their shortcomings won't grow either, because if you aren't admitting that you are scared of failure, you're scared of being judged, then you don't take accountability. And if you don't have accountability, then how is growth supposed to happen? Growth is extremely oriented on your autonomy. It's something you create, right? So it's something that you have to be extremely honest and authentic and real with yourself. And my next point will be how to stay grounded in your growth amidst all of this anxiety and fear. By prioritizing your goals and maintaining your clear purpose, you can ensure yourself a more structured and growth mindset towards your journey. Similarly, by ignoring what other people say, by making sure your growth journey is yours alone, that's how you gain more confidence in whatever you're doing. By ignoring external validation, ignoring social media, ignoring what other people say about your journey, that's the key to crafting maturity and ensuring that you develop your own self-confidence. Because at the end of the day, it's it's ultimately all up to you. Nobody is growing for you. Nobody can grow for you because the things that you learn here are deeply personal and they are specifically yours. And so you need to remember that whatever you do, you do it with realism. You do it without any doubt in yourself, but you also be realistic with your capabilities. It's not good to push yourself too far, but do things gradually, slowly, with intention. And just remember that growth is something that requires a lot of patience. It's not supposed to be something easy. Almost always requires some level of effort, whether it is small or it's a large amount of effort. And so I want to just close this off by just affirming that despite what anyone says, despite what you think about yourself, your growth is guaranteed, and it all depends on how willing you are to work for it, how much it means to you, how much you participate in your own journey. It's all about having no doubt in your abilities and understanding that doubt is just an illusion. It's just a whisper from the devil because you're in charge of your pathway and everything worthwhile will be difficult. You have to remember that. Good things come at a price, which you have to be willing to pay, but it all will come together very beautifully at the end to give you the growth and the maturity that you want. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope this video sparked something in you and you learned something from it. If, as I said earlier, if you want to mention something, you want to talk about something in the comments, please make sure to do that. I hope that this provoked you, this, taught you new things. And I also would love if you could check out my other videos if you have time. Anyways, I thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next one.